Did you know that the most impregnable fortress of the wizarding world was actually built upon a deep fear? The Ministry of Magic was founded not to ensure perfect justice, but to hide desperately. For centuries, wizards and muggles lived side by side, but in a tension that persisted like a ticking time bomb. By the 17th century, the witch hunts started by muggles had turned into a brutal nightmare for wizarding families. At that time, the Wizards' Council, representing all wizards, was completely inadequate in stopping this chaos and slaughter. Wizarding families were forced to flee into the depths of dark forests and isolated mountain cottages to protect their children. Wands were constantly glowing as a defensive shield against Muggle torches and their rage. However, the real danger came not from the outside, but from within, from the growing anger of wizards tired of hiding their power. The International Statute of Wizarding Secrecy was born in 1692 from the ashes of this bloody and desperate period. Protecting this massive secret necessitated the birth of a brand new, uncompromising, and much stronger central authority. The weak Wizards' Council was dissolved, and in 1707 a brand new structure was established in the darkness of the underground, the Ministry of Magic. Ulick Gamp, with his uncompromising personality, was appointed as the first Minister for Magic of this perfect structure. Ulick Gamp, with his heavy robes and piercing gaze, was determined to bring order to the chaos with an iron fist. The Ministry's first and most terrifying department, the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, took shape in his hands. The cold, black-tiled corridors of the Ministry began to echo with the heavy footsteps of the first Auror units. Ulick Gamp's first order was to establish secret Obliviator squads that would skillfully use memory-wiping charms. The minds of every Muggle who accidentally witnessed magic were ruthlessly wiped and modified by Ministry officials. Step by step, the wizarding world retreated completely underground, leaving the surface to the oblivious Muggles. Gamp's rule was harsh and despotic, but it ensured the survival of the wizarding race without it being eradicated. The Ministry grew rapidly. The Department of Mysteries sealed its doors forever, beginning to swallow the darkest secrets of the universe. Over time, the Ministry transformed into a massive labyrinth operating meters beneath the ground in London. The black-tiled walls filled with the hurried images of employees flying in through green fireplaces. The solid bureaucratic foundations laid by Ulick Gamp maintained a delicate peace for nearly 200 years. However, wherever power knows no bounds, the seeds of corruption silently wait for the right moment to sprout. While the Ministry of Magic was experiencing its golden age, it had already met the poison of arrogance that would bring its own end. The Ministry of Magic had quickly woven a massive network of bureaucracy that infiltrated every corner of the wizarding world. Laws, decrees, and strict regulations were constantly being written to imprison the free and chaotic essence of magic. Protecting the delicate border with the Muggle world had become the Ministry's most obsessive and primary fixation. This obsession led to the birth of excluded yet critical departments like the Misuse of Muggle Artifacts Office. Loyal employees like Arthur Weasley tried to patch the dangerous cracks between the two worlds in these small offices. Amidst enchanted teapots and biting doorknobs, Arthur marveled at the ability of ordinary people to survive without magic. However, in the upper floors of the Ministry that smelled of power, this pure curiosity toward Muggles had already been replaced by a hidden arrogance. Pure blood-obsessed families gathered in the shadows and began to inject their own poisonous ideologies into the Ministry's fair policies. And then, the darkest nightmare in the history of the wizarding world, Lord Voldemort, appeared on the stage of history. When the First Wizarding War broke out, the Ministry of Magic was paralyzed within the massive labyrinth it had built itself. Aurors fought bravely on the front lines, but the bureaucracy was so cumbersome that the darkness spread more every day. Voldemort's sudden downfall before baby Harry Potter was, for the Ministry, not so much a victory as it was a deep and desperate opportunity to catch its breath. This period of fake peace entered a new era of blindness and denial, with Cornelius Fudge sitting in the seat of Minister for Magic. Cornelius Fudge, with his lime green bowler hat and nervous smile, wanted to believe and make others believe that everything was perfect. His greatest fear was the disruption of the sweet order they had built, and the beloved Dumbledore taking his position. Yet Albus Dumbledore, as the great headmaster of Hogwarts, was always aware of this dangerous and spoiled complacency of the Ministry. Albus Dumbledore, with his silver hair and the sharp intellect behind his calm demeanor, sensed the bloody storm on the horizon. Loyal friends like Minerva McGonagall were Dumbledore's greatest supporters against the Ministry's blind stubbornness. Cornelius Fudge chose to deny plain facts and cling tightly to lies to protect his office and reputation. Yet, behind the cold walls of Azkaban prison, lashed by the waves, the Dark Lord's loyal Death Eaters were waiting for the day of his return. Even the Dementors, the Ministry's own guards, were slowly spinning out of control and heeding the call of their former master. In the Department of Mysteries at the heart of the Ministry, the glass spheres on the dusty shelves whispered dark prophecies of the approaching Great War. And one day, at the end of Harry Potter's 4th year at Hogwarts, that undeniable, terrifying truth emerged in a bloody way. The Dark Lord Voldemort had returned from the brink of death and was reborn from flesh to bone with dark magic. The Ministry of Magic was about to face the most ruthless test in its history, but instead of seeing the truth, it preferred to shut its eyes tightly. When the Cornelius Fudge era ended with a series of denial of reality and terrible mistakes, the Ministry was a wreck. The war-weary Rufus Scrimgeour, who took over the task, tried to keep this decaying structure standing with an iron will. Aurors were showing a relentless and desperate resistance against the Death Eater attacks increasing every day on the streets. Lord Voldemort, on the other hand, was watching them from within the darkness, waiting patiently, like a poisonous snake cornering its prey. Everyone thought the Dark Lord would show up at the Ministry doors with a massive army and flames. But the biggest shock was that the Ministry fell not by an attack from the outside, but by a single curse whispered from within. High-ranking official Pius Thicknesse had been secretly placed under the Imperious Curse and completely turned into a mindless puppet of Voldemort. Without a single door being broken, without a single alarm sounding, the Ministry of Magic became the enemy's headquarters in one night. The glorious fortress of centuries was now nothing more than a playground for soulless bureaucrats signing the decrees of darkness. The most terrifying face of this corrupt order was the Muggle-born Registration Commission, led by the pink-clad sadist Dolores Umbridge. Innocent wizards were sorted by blood status, their wands were broken, and they were exiled to the dark corners of the earth. The interiors of the Ministry courtrooms were filled with Dementors that drained souls and spread an icy despair. Despite this, inside this suffocating darkness, quiet but stubborn lights continued to burn. Brave hearts, like Arthur Weasley, were secretly leaking vital information from the very heart of the Ministry to the Order of the Phoenix. Outside, in the depths of forests and mountains, Harry Potter was hunting the Horcruxes that would put an end to all this madness. Under Voldemort's shadow, who was friend or foe, who was traitor or hero, had all become entangled.
The Magic is Might monument, once a symbol of harmony and togetherness, had been shattered and replaced by a terrifying monument defending pure blood superiority.
Voldemort's cruel and fascist laws were bleeding through the Ministry's trusted piles of paperwork. Albus Dumbledore's legacy and wisdom remained the only compass for the minority resisting the darkness. Loyal wizards, led by Professor McGonagall, were reinforcing Hogwarts' defense against the Ministry's fascist troops. The Department of Law was now an execution room. It wasn't footsteps that echoed in the corridors, but the fearful breaths of prisoners. Dolores Umbridge, under her mask of fake compassion, was sending innocent lives to dungeons with a stroke of a quill. When the Dark Lord's army stood at the gates of Hogwarts, the Ministry of Magic was completely under his thumb. Corrupt officials and Death Eaters were determined to take over the school to defend the pure blood regime. However, Order of the Phoenix resistance fighters like Arthur Weasley were there to fight to their last breath. The Stone Knights, under Minerva McGonagall's command, had built an unbreakable wall of flesh and stone against this dark army. In this bloody war, the secret sacrifices of heroes living in the shadows like Severus Snape would finally come to light. Amidst the ruins of the Great Hall, the inevitable final duel between Harry Potter and Lord Voldemort began. As the red and green lights erupted from their wands and collided, the fate of the entire wizarding world was locked into a single second. When the Elder Wand recognized its true master, Voldemort's own lethal curse rebounded and turned him into ash forever. With the death of the Dark Lord, the suffocating and mind-numbing web of magic that held the Ministry of Magic captive instantly shattered. Collaborators like Puppet Minister Pius Thicknesse and the sadist Dolores Umbridge finally met the cold face of justice. Now the real question was, how would this ruined, corrupt, and blood-stained ministry labyrinth rise from its ashes again? The wizarding world urgently needed an honest, fair, and unshakable leader to gather up this heavy wreckage. This challenging task was taken on by the powerful and confidence-inspiring Kingsley Shacklebolt, one of the war's heroes. As soon as Kingsley sat in the ministry chair, he banished the Dementors from Azkaban prison forever. All the old bureaucrats, poisoned by arrogance and pure blood superiority, were sent to dungeons to face justice. The heroes of the war, Harry Potter and Ron Weasley, joined the Auror office and became the new, unshakable swords and shields of the ministry. The intelligent Hermione Granger, on the other hand, was rewriting laws to guarantee the rights of magical creatures and Muggle-borns. Arthur Weasley finally received the appreciation he deserved. His pure love for Muggle inventions was no longer a subject of ridicule in the ministry, but a vision. For the first time since its founding, the new Ministry of Magic was based not on the fear of hiding, but on true justice and equality. Under Kingsley's leadership, the paranoid arrogance brought by centuries of hiding in the shadows had been replaced by a transparent and reliable understanding. A brand new Magic is Might monument was built, where centaurs, house elves, and wizards were all counted as equals. The authoritarian structure founded with the dark and uncompromising vision of Ulick Gamp had finally transformed into a safe haven for everyone. This mystical heart beating beneath London had been completely cleansed of the heavy shadows and prejudices of the past. Those black-tiled corridors underground are now echoing not with intrigues, but with the footsteps of a bright and hopeful future. The Ministry of Magic is no longer just a power center. It has turned into a true brotherhood oath that protects magic, life, and all differences. Golden lights began to dance again in the ministry atrium. Wizards were no longer walking in the shadows, but in the light. After the Dementors were banished, Azkaban prison stopped being a torture center that rotted souls and began to feel the sun. All those dark records based on bloodline and pure blood superiority were burned forever in the green flames of the ministry fireplaces. Cornelius Fudge's blind paranoia and timid policies were left to rot on the dustiest shelves of the archives as a shameful document of warning. As for Dolores Umbridge, she paid the price for the torture she inflicted on the innocent heavily behind the cold and ruthless stone walls of Azkaban. Now, in the courtrooms of the ministry, it was not power or noble blood that weighed in the scales, but only pure justice. Harry, Ron, and Hermione had completely saved not just Hogwarts, but a whole wizarding bureaucracy that had been rotting for centuries. The rebuilt Magic is Might monument was the seal of that bright new age where no magical race was superior to another. The magical memos buzzing through the corridors were no longer carrying the cold orders of death, but the enthusiastic plans of hope and reconstruction. Under Kingsley's unshakable leadership, the Ministry of Magic was experiencing its most peaceful spring, waking up from its long, bloody winter in history. However, in the deepest, forgotten corners of the Department of Mysteries, the faint light of unopened prophecy spheres continues to tremble with danger. Had the poison of arrogance scattered with Voldemort's ashes been erased forever? Or was human nature asleep to create a new darkness? The legacy of the Dark Lord Voldemort would now remain only as a warning on the pages of old books. Wizards realized that the black-tiled Ministry underground was no longer a center of fear, but a home. While Harry Potter's scar faded as a memory of the past, the future was now completely bright. Hogwarts continues to prepare the new generation of witches and wizards for the future to cast magic freely. Magic was not just at the tip of a wand, but was now united in the heart of the whole society, with love and justice. The gloomy underground halls of the Ministry had turned into a harbor of peace, filled with the laughter of children. The poisonous mist of dark magic had left its place to the bright sun of love and friendship. The wizarding world had learned, albeit very late, that true power is not to rule, but to protect. At the end of this epic journey, Harry, Ron, and Hermione had built not just a world, but a future. The doors of the Ministry of Magic were now wide open not to the prejudices of the past, but to a new and equal world. And this was the final line, written with hope, of that legendary, bloody, and dark story of the wizarding world.